Thank you, Ove. Thank you, everyone. So yes, this will be a short presentation of a publishing house that I've built in 2011 with Mathieu Senac, who's there, and me, David Desrimais. And this is going to be short case studies about books, some books we made that will, as case studies, help us to think a little bit of the main question, which is why doing books in a digital age, which is, I think, a good question. It's still a question that leads our action and what we do. Originally, that was in 2011, this strong feeling that we had that a lot of things happened on our screens, already smartphones at that time, but also computer screens, a lot of emotion, truly genuine emotion that were happening on screens, and that they have no representation in our bookshelves. And for us, who come from both the art world and the bookmaking world, the bookshelves are very crucial locations in our homes and in general, and in your homes. What you do when you get to someone's place, you look at the furniture, but you also look at the bookshelves. And we do see our bookshelves as some kind of mental landscapes where we can store ideas, things, moments of our lives, you know, these kind of things. And the fact that a lot of emotions, genuine emotions, happened on screen and had no representation there, made us think that we shall try to produce some books that may be a bridge in between these two worlds. So this is basically how we kind of pitched the publishing house. And this is both, as I said, some kind of this conceptual or intellectual idea of working with artists that are still behind screens and to work with them to produce physical objects. But it is also a commercial project, a business project. That means we need to make a living out of it and we need to produce these books. So one of the ways is to extend the distribution of the books in the most countries that we can. So right now, the publishing house is represented by 4 distribution partners, which is not only logistics, but also real humans in something like 15 countries that go to the bookstores and present the books and try to really make them alive in the most countries possible. So this is both an idea and a business that needs to go on. So let me introduce to you a few case studies. I'll go fast. This one was the very first book we made with Canadian artist John Ruffman, which is called The 9 Eyes of Google Streetview. The 9 Eyes is the camera that is on the cars, and they have 9 cameras to stitch photos and create this new world. Basically, the work by John Ruffman is to go on Google Street View and then to frame something, to zoom in, and by screen printing, he makes a photograph, which is a funny thing because he really needs to convoke 20th century habits in digital world, like trying to appropriate and connect to our lives, like taking photographs. Like, for example, a web page is still called a page. So even if our vocabulary, we have these bridges in between digital and physical world. John Ruffman himself says that he refers of his work as something closely connected to street photography, Walker Evans. He has very classical references in that way. So that was interesting to produce a photo book made out this digital, generally digital work by that time was only based on Tumblr. Remember, we were in 2011, so that was the Tumblr moment. Another Tumblr, and the next book we made is this one, which is interesting in many ways, because it's a book and a Tumblr name, Kim Jong-il Looking at Things, and it says pretty much everything. But what's interesting there with Kim Jong-il Looking at Things, that Tumblr, by that time, was one of the most followed Tumblr ever, which is interesting because, you can only know that if the person who has the Tumblr says it to you. There is no counting the people that was following by that time. You just need to trust that it was interesting, and there is no validation by the amount of people following. So actually, himself only knew it was one of the most followed Tumblr ever, because let me show you a little bit more of that. Because the Tumblr team said to him. So this is interesting because this book has been made in 2012, and it's already the 6th edition of the book, and it that means it has been sold worldwide, more than 15,000 copies of it, which makes it kind of a bestseller in its own category. The next one interesting to deal with is a book called Art Selfie. Basically, Art Selfie is a collection of people taking photographs of themselves in front of art. And the more we were working on this book, but also on this whole collection of books, the more we saw that everything is deeply rooted in history. For example, the questions of reflection of self in art, the question of self-portraits, this question, self-portraits in art history, is really something huge. These questions are very ancient questions, and here there is kind of something new, but the remix of this whole fascinating question creates indeed a very new and interesting approach of it. So that's also what was interesting for us by making this a book. Also, and I did not speak about that too much before, also because we commission each time texts and essays to kind of enlarge the subject and to allow us to dive in a side subject that is connected to the very thematic. Here you have the selfie preoccupation. We have an introduction by Douglas Coupland, the Canadian novelist, who says how bad, how awful selfie is in our culture, and that was very exciting to get inside the book by this very cold shower by Douglas Coupland saying how awful this is in our world. The next project is quite fascinating here, and I want to tell you a little bit more about that. It's called Google Volume 1, and it has been made by two British artists who are Benjamin West and Felix Eyes. Basically, they took the Oxford Dictionary and they replaced every word and its definition by the first answer in Google Image, and then put back the images where they belong in alphabetical order of the original words, which is a very interesting thing because it has been done in 2013, so almost the day after the book was out, many images have changed, yes, but the collection of images that we have here is some kind of a very strange, huge photographic portrait of the world, using the word we use to describe it through a tool that should be the most relevant one to turn a word into an image. At least we ask him to be relevant, and the first answer, as you know, shall be the most one. So this gigantic picture is something very unique and something very interesting to freeze and to have in the bookshelf, as said. Also, the making was interesting because you don't want to do that by hand. So to realize that book, we had to build a software that we fed him with all the words in the dictionary, and then, freeze a minute, and then we explained to the software how to paste the images, and he makes 3 columns, and then he reaches the bottom, and then it's the page number also for first image or every page number in the book, and then he produces a JPEG, which is a full page, and this is how we did this layout. So in the process itself, it has a lot to do with digital processing and ways to do that, otherwise you can't. The other thing interesting is that we're working on Google Volume 2, which is exactly the same thing, but next year. So as a regular encyclopedia or dictionary, we can have editions regularly, and then you have crazy, gigantic pictures of the world. And as you can see, this is not like art. This is very the world we're living in, kind of. At that point, we met someone very interesting. Some of you, I'm sure, know about him, which was called Kenneth Goldsmith. Kenneth Goldsmith is a very prominent poet and conceptual artist based in New York. And maybe you know him also because he's the founder of UbuWeb, this huge archive on the internet for art and avant-garde everything. And Kenneth Goldsmith wrote almost 10 years ago a very strong essay which is called Uncreative Writing, subtitled Managing Language in the Digital Age. And the book is about what did the digital age, the screens, what did they do to our relationship to the texts, to literature, but not only literature, especially to the text, how we appropriate it, how we fragment, how we deal with it, how we received a lot of amount of text. And this essay on creative writing is really a strong key for us to understand what's going on. A very short example is that in the beginning of that, he takes this example, this analogy, that in the Orsay Museum in Paris, you have a room which is, I don't remember the name of the room, but the point of the room is to be at the mid-19th century when photography is invented. You have the birth of photography and what are the paintings that have been done right after. So also to show that the world that we live in and the representation of the world, following the birth of photography, we can't paint the same way because it changed. The way to represent real world has been impacted forever, which is not a problem for painting because the trajectory of painting will continue to evolve and you will have all the 20th century great movements, but still something happened that changed the game forever. And he says that something quite similar is happening right now for the text and the literature and all the interactions we have with text because of the digital. So it doesn't remove the interest we have in poetry and literature, but its trajectory has to change. And at least we have to consider what's going on with text. So we built this book, which is not really a book, actually. It's a stack of paper, which is made of 500 texts and short stories written by him. And all of these interesting stories, a lot of them are about UbuWeb, for example, are a way to explore that. And also we love this format that there is no binding, and it was a way to offer and produce, again, a different object, which is technically considered as a book with its ISBN, barcode, international distribution, blah, blah, blah. But in fact, it's only sheets that are just going around. So this is the kind of example of text that we have in the book. This one is what we may call the first page. Actually, they are not numbered, but if you unwrap the stack of paper, this is the first text that you have, which also explains a little bit the title and find it interesting. And then I jump to a very last project that we're very proud of, which is this one. Maybe you've seen this car and the cover of the ITFA paper today. We're very proud of that. Wonder Road is a project made by Ross Godwin, this fantastic human here, that we met recently. And so this is him, where I am presenting the book. Basically, Ross built an AI and trained an AI with a lot of literature references, and he put this AI in a car. Outside of the car, there is a camera, video camera, microphone, GPS, and a clock, all connected to the AI. And then he done one of Kerouac's trip for Wonder Road, but this time this is the car that is writing the text. The interesting thing is, this text is really beautiful. So this is very interesting to see that this project existed before we made a book out of it, but this is the book. And it's very interesting to see that it started to really exist and to expand in this shape, the shape of a book. I just read the first sentence of the book, and that's why when we met Ross and he gave us the manuscript, you will see that my publisher art started to beat a little faster. So the machine starts the novel like that. It was 7 minutes to 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was the only good thing that had happened. Here we go. On the road. So you can find the book there, and I will jump to some kind of a short conclusion. So we do work on with a remarkably stable technology. I'm talking about the technology of the codex, which is the shape of the books that we use almost since the 1st century after Christ. So 2,000 years of the same tech to do almost the same thing, which is transferring knowledge, is something very interesting. And we still have the feeling that this as something, we should do something more and more books on the digital age. It resisted a lot of things, actually. It resisted the invention of press printing by Gutenberg. It resisted a lot of things. And it's not about resisting anything, but it's about acknowledging that the strength as a tech object, which is the book in the shape of a codex, has still something to do with us. Also, it gives us a remarkable object to highlight our feelings. I mean, we cross a lot of things on our digital lives, and sometimes I do have the feeling and the emergency to highlight some of them. So I like the idea to produce the books that does that. And it allows us to freeze a little bit the stream that we're constantly in. And, well, the book does all that. Also, it offers somewhere that is finite and cozy, in a moment where we all experiment this kind of infinite expansion feeling on the digital lives. And also, it can be offered, it can be transferred, and it can be a gift, because no matter the very best link ever you shall email to someone will always be a shitty Xmas gift, you know? So in that idea, I still feel like we need objects and way to share these emotions. That's pretty much it. Thank you.